So without further ado, let's introduce to you our speaker, Clint Wilder, who is senior editor at CleanEdge, a cleantech firm, research firm, and co-author of 2 books, Cleantech Nation, which we're going to be talking about today, and also Cleantech Revolution, which came out in 2007. He's an award-winning business journalist who's covered the high-tech and cleantech industries since 1985, and he has co-authored many reports and columns on industry trends for CleanEdge and is a regular blogger at the Huffington Post, and has been a facilitator of the Clinton Global Initiative. So let's welcome Clint. Thank you. So to get things started, Clint, let's talk about what prompted you to write this book, Cleantech Nation.
I mean, the roots of Cleantech Nation were really in the first book, Cleantech Revolution, which, as Lisa Ann said, came out in 2007. And I had been working with Ron at CleanEdge for, well, about 3 years when we first talked about the idea of doing a book. And it's interesting, I was the writer-journalist on the team, and Ron, who is a very good writer, but his background was business and marketing. So he said, you know, I think this book is, this sector is ripe to have a book written about it. The clean tech was just emerging, and you know, not well known to the mainstream. And I said, you know, as a writer, a lifelong journalist, I've always thought about writing a book. I always thought it would be about baseball, but and someday it could happen. So we sort of started the process, and it's a lengthy process. You have to do a proposal, get an agent, shop it around, et cetera, et cetera. But we were fortunate to get a good offer from HarperCollins. And so that was the Cleantech Revolution. So 2007, and the book was pretty successful and translated into 7 languages, which we're very proud of. And then we were, thinking about, should we do another book? And what we were noticing, with Cleantech Revolution, the subtitle was Cleantech Revolution: The Next Big Growth and Investment Opportunity. So this is a book about the business of clean tech, and basically kind of telling people this isn't just, hippies throwing solar panels on a roof. I mean, these are, some of the world's largest corporations and investment firms really involved in it. And there's a lot of money to be made in the growth of venture capital, and, when things were really taking off. So, fast forward to, I guess, a couple of years ago, so our book had been out then, 3 years at that time. And what we were seeing, and it was also reflected in some of the work that we were starting to do at CleanEdge, which I'll talk about, was clean tech not only as a growing industry, but as a cornerstone of economic development at the local, city, state, and ultimately national level. And particularly this conversation always sort of begins with China. And so when Ron and I were doing research for Cleantech Revolution, we attended in 2006 the first, what's called Renewable Energy Finance Forum China conference in Beijing. We also went to Shanghai on that trip. And China was just kind of putting out these plans, saying, we're going to do all this, put a lot of money and a lot of development into clean tech. And the rest is history, right? I mean, they've just grown into the world's largest solar manufacturer, the world's largest market for wind power, the world's largest maker of batteries for electric vehicles, and other, the list goes on and on and on. And and this was, we saw the U.S. slipping behind, and Germany, another clean tech powerhouse, just continuing to do their thing, and lots of other countries too. So and we felt strongly that the U.S. shouldn't fall behind. And it's not just a national pride thing. I mean, this is jobs, this is balance of payments, trade, etc. So that was really our motivation, and it dovetailed with work we were doing at CleanEdge, where we launched our State Clean Energy Leadership Index. So we've done 3 years of that, where we rank the 50 states in clean energy leadership. overall clean tech leadership. And a big component of that is it's jobs and economic development and how much of the workforce is in this. And because we think, our thought here is that these are the key industries for economic leadership globally in the 21st century. And so that's kind of the message we want to get out there.
So what type of research did you do for this book? How did you develop the insights and the opinions?
Well, fortunately, a lot of it was work that we're doing at CleanEdge on the state index, and there's a chapter about state leadership. For the global landscape chapter, that was kind of just hunkering down, and we know a lot of the right people.
Yeah.
So knowing who to interview, as I always say, as a journalist, when people say ask me a question, I say, well, as a journalist, I don't know the answer, but I know who does.
Right.
And so finding the right people, and that's I think it makes a good book when you have a lot of different voices besides just the author, or in this case, authors. So that's a big part of it. And then we also at that time we were doing a report called Cleantech Job Trends, which included the top 15 cities for cleantech jobs. So there's a chapter on that. Now we've kind of broadened our city research, because last week we launched our first U.S. Metro Cleantech Index, ranking the 50 largest metro areas in the U.S. And happy to report San Jose finished #1 and San Francisco #2.
So there's going to be a little bit of rivalry.
Yeah,
San Francisco
for sure.
San Jose.
Yes.
So the main takeaway from the Cleantech Nation, I guess, would be this 7-point plan that you have, which is the most actionable part of the book. And it's got some things in there people might expect, like National Renewable Portfolio Standard. But I'm also interested to know, what are the recommendations here that people aren't going to expect?
Yeah, this is, so, if you write a book where the subtitle is How the U.S. Can Lead in the New Global Economy, we felt it's important to kind of explain, okay, so what are you going to do about it? So the final chapter of the book is the 7-point action plan for repowering America. And I think for the kind of unexpected ones, probably our most controversial plan item recommendation is to phase out all energy subsidies over 10 years. And we've seen the call for, even President Obama has talked about oil and gas subsidies.
And phasing those out.
Yes. But we think that the controversial part, at least in the clean tech industry, is, wait, but what about our subsidies? But we really believe that if you project out 10 years, if you look at the trends in the downward pricing, the costs, particularly solar has been incredibly dramatic with a lot of ancillary results. But for users of solar energy, solar has never been this affordable. And wind power is coming down. All technologies tend to drop in price over time. So you take those trends, and then we think it's a very unfair, unlevel playing field right now. That the amount of subsidies going to the fossil fuel industries are orders of magnitude more than what's going to clean tech, which means drives me crazy that Congress can't pass a renewable production tax credit for the wind industry. It's costing thousands of jobs already. Anyway, I can get on that soapbox all night. But so we think, given this 10-year period, if you can get a truly level playing field at the end of that 10 years, we think wind, solar, and other clean energy technologies really could compete on their own merits in the marketplace.
One of the other things that people might not expect is a national, I didn't write it down, I'm ad-libbing right now, National Infrastructure Bank?
Yes.
Can you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, that's, this is sometimes known as the Green Bank. The idea, it's a financial mechanism that leverages both public and private capital for large infrastructure projects. And this is not, the concept is hardly new. There's a great model called the Export-Import Bank, some of you may be very familiar with, which has been around since the 1930s. It's part of the New Deal. And it's, just has leveraged billions of dollars in investment in infrastructure projects outside the U.S. Yes. So, why not take that same idea for grid improvement, large scale renewable energy projects, etc. And in fact, this is already starting to happen at the state level. The state of Connecticut has passed something like this, and the city of Chicago has launched. They don't have any projects that have started yet, but that was just announced by Mayor Rahm Emanuel earlier this year. So the benefits of it are, we think, very clear, and it would be a really good thing to have at the national level. And there's a group in Washington called the Coalition for Green Capital, headed by former FCC Commissioner Reed Hunt, who we quote in the book, is pushing for this.
And then what about fully funding military projects related to clean energy or renewables, clean tech in general? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's not well known to a lot of people that one of the biggest supporters of clean tech right now is the Pentagon. Both for their combat operations, for just more effective and safer operations, because they know that the statistics on the number of casualties from people, troops and contractors too, either transporting or guarding fuel convoys it's staggering. I mean, it's one of the most dangerous things that we've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan. So if you can replace that fuel with solar, for example, you don't have the weight, and you don't have these tankers. It's also very expensive. I forget the exact figures, but it's like hundreds of dollars a gallon when you add up the costs of getting that fuel to where it needs to go. And then at the same time, making the bases here in the U.S. energy efficient, and powering them with renewable energy. So some of the most eloquent speakers I've heard in the process of writing the book about the benefits of clean energy have been people in the military. And so it seems like a win-win, and yet some of our politicians have chosen this area of military spending to attack. Because the big issue has been biofuels, which are, of course, more expensive right now. But this ignores the entire history of the Pentagon in funding early stage technologies and helping them develop that, which will bring the cost down eventually.
Right, throwing their weight behind it and leveraging their buying power, basically, to establish a new industry.
Yeah. So this in a way, this recommendation is simple. It's just say, the military's already doing this. Keep doing it. More. Yeah.
I'm going to open us up for questions in a minute, because I'm a big believer in these conversations always get really interesting when the audience starts asking questions. I can research everything, till the cows come home, but you guys are going to have much more interesting questions than me. So I'll ask you one more, and then we'll open it up. It's been my experience that typically in this country, states move a little faster on controversial issues than the government does, and I think our government is sort of built that way, to move a little slower.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the cities and states that are getting clean tech right. Who are they, and what can we learn from them?
Yeah, well, we all live in the right place for this. California has been #1 in our state leadership index all 3 years by a pretty wide margin. And then, as I mentioned, in the recent Metro Index, San Jose #1, San Francisco #2, but Sacramento and Los Angeles are both in the top 7, I think. So it's, it is just, it's not just the Bay Area, obviously. So, but you look around the country, Austin, Texas, Boston, Portland, Seattle, Denver, they're all Chicago. They all have, different lead in different aspects. And I guess the good thing about Cleantech is it's so many things. Portland leads in green buildings. Chicago has become a center of wind industry jobs. Boston is a leader in energy efficiency. So you can leverage what strengths you have. Now here in the Bay Area we have the perfect storm of that's probably a bad metaphor.
This week.
Yeah, exactly. For clean tech development, you've got great research universities, you've got the venture capitalists, you have the entrepreneurial culture, you have great resources, great solar. We get a lot of sun, and so it's all those elements. When we talk about clean tech development at any level, we always said that there are 3 pillars that you need: technology, capital, and policy. So I think you could probably, if you analyze any technology-based industry, it's probably the same. So you need people developing and building the technology. You need people funding it, and but the policy piece of this is so important, and that's one thing that we track very closely at CleanEdge, and is always an important part of clean tech leadership, either at the state or city level.
Does anybody have any questions?
I did have a question, a follow-up to the
Sure.
one you just answered. When we're talking about the top cities that lead, are we talking about in terms of companies that are based there or the city itself? Because as far as I knew, Houston was the #1 city in terms of buyer of renewable power. Like the city uses the most renewable power in the country.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't expect
From Texas?
Yeah.
Houston.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Well, that's
and
because
now
that's
corporate
a city
headquarters
policy.
of Wind also.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Well, let me.
You want to reference your own?
I do. Yeah, because I can't. I don't remember all 15 cities off the top of my head. But the chapter called Centers of Innovation.
What page are you on? Because we all have a book now.
Yes. Please turn your text to that's page 120. Now this is this is from our 2010 Cleantech Jobs report, and so the rankings are different in our brand new index, which this came out last week. Obviously, too late for the book. But yeah, you see Houston at #8. So it's it's surprising in some ways. But the other thing, Houston is the energy capital, and so a lot of what gets classified as clean tech jobs are people working to make the use of fossil fuels more efficient, both within the fossil fuel industry and the use of it. So that's that's energy efficiency, that counts as clean tech. So that's you see some surprising things there. But in the Metro Clean Tech Index, which you can read about on our website, it's a subscription product to get the whole thing, but we do put out the top cities and executive summary on the website. We have 4 categories. It's green buildings, advanced transportation, clean electricity, and carbon management. So that's where, and I think Houston does well there, as you mentioned, because the city is the largest purchaser of green energy by a city. And the last category is innovation, investment, and workforce. so we hit all the technology, capital, and policy is all covered.
Anybody else?
You mentioned Connecticut was doing a few different innovative things when it comes to kind of just financing the clean tech industry.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the Clean Energy Finance and Investment Authority? And what other states have a similar initiative? Because I know it's relatively new.
It is relatively new, and it's interesting. It's headed by a guy named Dan Estey, who was a Yale professor who co-authored a best-selling book called Green to Gold about companies, really sustainability initiatives really paying off at the bottom line. And so he's a super smart guy, and so that he was brought in by the governor to run this new clean energy department, if you will. I forget the exact, it's in the book, because we do quote him. And they have been really at the leading edge with the Green Bank. I think they have they have an initiative for funding the PACE, if you're familiar with PACE, property assessed clean energy, I think it stands for, which is where you can pay off solar through your city property tax. And so Connecticut's a great model. We'll be watching it to see how successful it is, because it was just all passed earlier this year.
Right. Anyone else? I saw somebody with a hand.
So I have to say, I didn't read your 2007 book, but since then to now, it seems like fracking and natural gas, it just changed the whole picture. And do you see that, and how do you see how things have changed from 2007 to now?
Yeah,
based on that?
It's been a huge development in affecting the clean tech industry. Basically resulting in a very large amount of low-cost natural gas, which of course, cost is the name of the game, and so it's harder for renewable sources to compete with this very cheap natural gas. Now, the good news about it is it's really knocked coal out, and natural gas is much cleaner than coal. No? Okay, we'll talk about that.
We can make it a discussion, or you can finish and then I can.
Yeah. I should say,
As far as carbon emissions and greenhouse gases go, natural gas would be cleaner.
Well, life cycle.
There's controversy about it. Burning natural gas in a power plant compared to a coal plant is much cleaner. What I think you're about to say is, with the fracking process itself and the transmission of the natural gas, there's been a lot of leakage, and methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So it's not great.
It's not perfect. Yeah. Do you? I mean, some people see it. Some people will say it's like a bridge for us to get from off of fossil fuels and onto more full renewable energy.
Yeah. Well, there's
it is a fossil fuel.
Yeah. Right. But off of carbon.
Yeah. There's an interesting interesting development. We see more plants of doing both, like building a big solar array next to a natural gas plant and using both. And the current natural gas plant technology is such that you can fire them up and down much faster, which makes it a good pairing with solar or wind, which are intermittent. So yeah, I mean, we do see a bridge, but anyone who's out there trying to compete with low-cost natural gas will say, yeah, but it's really tough. Now, I don't think the prices are going to stay at this low level, and the price of natural gas overseas is still much higher than it is in the U.S. So, it's kind of a.
Why would you say that it wouldn't stay at this level?
Well, I think right now it's like the Wild West, and there's so much going on that and I'm not an energy trading expert, but I think the speculation is that there's just going to be all this supply, and I think for one thing, I mean, if we have fracking is very controversial, and I think all it takes is one big accident, it could the industry could get set back, and then prices would go up.
Any other questions?
You started off by saying it actually all starts with China. Can you talk a little bit more about how you see China's influence on clean tech and in particular solar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the question of global competition in clean tech starts with China. And I think, well, certainly, in solar, the effect on prices has just been dramatic. So much production going on in China and bringing costs down, and that's a real double-edged sword, because if you're in the business of making solar panels, trying to compete on a product where the prices are dropping, that's really hard, and that's what happened to Solyndra and and a lot of other companies too, much bigger companies. So, but if you're on the end of buying it, installing it, it's things have never been better. So there's that influence. But you said just the shift of the industry on the production side, just China is the center of everything now, and that's happened very quickly, really. And we do see it a lot more wind power components coming from China as well.
There's a question in the back.
I have a question. You might have touched on this in your book. I haven't read it yet, but for clean tech energy, if the Republican Party does win, in your expert opinion, what do you see occurring? Maybe like 3 points. I know this would be a long answer, but what do you see occurring from that?
So, I mean, it depends on what that victory looks like, obviously. If Romney won, and let's say,
what do you see in the next 4 years, right, with Romney leading the country?
Yeah, well, my colleague Ron Pernick is going to have a column out the day after Election Day.
He's got
Has he written to us?
No, it's sort of like, it's a message for the next president, or the current president re-elected, either way. So he hasn't written it yet, but anyway, I think I'm not going to say that I think it would be a huge setback. I really do. And I'm fairly confident, but very nervous at the same time, because I've just seen the rhetoric, and it's. I think you could take take the joking about climate change, or you could pick any one of any number of comments that Romney has made, but the fact that he opposed the extension of the tax credit for wind, which put him on the opposite side of that issue with many Republican governors in places like Kansas, North Dakota, it's Oklahoma. The governor of Oklahoma said, I agree with Governor Romney on 99% of the issues, but not this one. So because it's about jobs, and so if he's willing to go to the Paul Ryan side of things to that extent, it could be a very bad 4 years if that happens.
I mean, I understand, like, I've been watching the election coverage, and it's very clear that, nobody talks about clean tech. they're not talking about renewables.
They actually did a little bit in the second debate.
Tiny bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can talk
But
about
it was-
natural gas. and energy independence,
And
which everyone knows is
and
not
clean coal. They
Oh,
both
yeah.
like clean
So,
coal.
I mean, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. There's a lot of money backing them. I get it.
Good one.
Yep.
But it is jobs.
Yeah.
We're talking about an industry that was, you know, what it was like 3 to 8% growth during the recession.
Right.
And, you know, it's just compounding, it's just continuing to grow. And it just seems like they're not seeing that the way we see it now. We're much closer to it.
Mm-hmm.
But does there come a point where those election financial contributions get overshadowed by the enormous amount of jobs that are being created in this industry? Can we get to that point?
Right. Let's repeal Citizens United.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, that's the biggest.
You know, like you say, we've seen what's happened in this campaign. So, you know, that all the good things about, I mean, you know, it's not only is it not being touted as good, it's being attacked.
Right.
And, you know, very unfairly, I think.
We always seem to be on the defensive. And is it possible for us to get on the offensive in this industry?
Well, you know, that's where I think, you know, hopefully.
Bringing it back to the budget.
You know, because this is, we really made an effort to be bipartisan and, you know, focus on those issues that, you know, any poll, the American people really like clean energy. And then if you ask, you know, do you support things like innovation, entrepreneurship, you know, homegrown technologies, national security, not to mention clean air and water. So, you know, there may be climate deniers, but there's no, like, you know, deniers of that clean air is better than dirty air.
Yeah.
But isn't it all about the finances, the monetary backing of oil and, right?
Yeah.
So it's a
Staggering.
tough battle.
Yeah, it is.
Recently, some of the news corporation shareholders, some of the big private funds like CalPERS have been trying to limit the powers of the Murdoch family. And they can't do it because the second largest shareholder is a Saudi billionaire. So the,
News Corp.
and I'm forgetting his shape, you know, what you will call it, but it's all oil money. So News Corporation, all of it, Fox, you know, movies, television, newspapers, it's controlled by a Saudi billionaire.
So it's really Al Jazeera in disguise.
No, Al Jazeera is not pro-Saudi billionaires.
Yeah.
It's-
No, I know.
Yeah, Al Jazeera is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Talking maybe back to policy, in terms of also like leveling the playing field by removing subsidies, what about, what's the future look like for either a carbon tax or cap and trade? Do you see that as maybe a necessary component to leveling that playing field?
I think, I mean, we get asked a lot, you know, why isn't that one of your recommendations? And because, you know, it would help things a lot, but we just don't see it happening. You know, we want things that, even though some of ours are ambitious, but I think, you know, because it has the word tax. And I think also the cap and trade, I mean, you know, we'll see where California is leading on that with AB 32 about to, you know, get launched.
But it's just going to push people out of California?
Well,
that's
you
what
know,
happens
this
in
is,
state thing, right?
yeah, I mean, I was on a conference call with journalists on Monday about this, about implementing AB 32, and yeah, that's, you know, it's one of the, you know, it's kind of like this big experiment, right? And we'll see. I mean, there are some, you know, it's so complex, but there are some safeguards in place to try to not have, you know, just send all the carbon emissions to Nevada, right? But yeah, you know, a carbon tax to me is the ideal thing. But in terms of, you know, a prescriptive list of policy recommendations, we thought it would just get, you know, be kind of dead on arrival. Here in 2012, now maybe, you know, maybe things will change. I mean, you know, we're going to have a lot more climate disasters like we had this week. If that changes the conversation, maybe.
Any other questions?
Yeah, what do you think state and local government should be doing to promote clean tech more effectively and job growth in that sector?
Well, I think, you know, you kind of said it. It's like, you know, put it out there as this is a job creator. Now that's, you know, and that's come under fire in the political realm. So, you know, we do, as a clean tech industry, we do have to deliver, because, you know, it is kind of under the microscope. But, you know, but I think certainly here in Northern California, you know, you've got a supported population to make that happen more. But, you know, I mean, anything that where people are aware that it is a growing industry and it's helping the job situation. That's the best thing you can do, I think, for public support.
As you were reporting the book, what were the hypotheses that didn't make it through interviews, or things that surprised you in interviews, that's emergent ideas that came out as you were interviewing folks?
What were some of the things you hadn't heard before?
Yeah. Think about that.
Good question.
Stuff the author.
Exactly. I think with some of our recommendations, I mean, I think, you know, I learn things a lot that I didn't know. Like one of the recommendations that I think could be the easiest and could have a huge effect is opening up these financial vehicles like master limited partnerships and real estate investment trusts to clean energy investing. And it's, you know, there's just some kind of tax code changes. And that, you know, I was like, really? That's it, yeah. And you know, to hear like, yeah, it's out there and a lot of people are talking about it. So it's kind of a light bulb moment. And then, you know, I think I'm always, in the cities chapter, there's we have the top 15 cities and then 5 best of the rest, smaller cities. And I mean, some of it I knew already, but Toledo, Ohio, with a transitioning from the glass making to solar. Now, of course, they've been hit with, you know, the solar manufacturing downturn, not down, you know, the cost crunch. But Spokane, Washington, which I'm sure Melody's familiar with, is the center of the world's largest smart meter company. Itron is based in that area, and so that's sort of a little clean tech cluster. Reno, Nevada, of all places, geothermal and some wind power companies. So those were kind of, you know, fun little eye openers.
Any more questions before we wrap it up?
One more?
Okay, so I see renewables is totally separate from like the smart grid, because one's all about networking and communications, and the other's much more about materials and building new innovations. You know, so where do you see? So some things definitely like policy, I can see affecting some things, but what about the smart grid? Because that's huge. It's existing utilities. It's not like new innovation in a way.
Well,
like,
actually, I mean, there's a ton of innovation in the smart grid space. Smart grid is a pretty broad umbrella, so it's not just, you know, a utility, you know, making things better, but, you know, you have this, as you say, it's very huge. It's all about information, really. You know, managing the flow of electrons better. It's so bad and inefficient today, and you know, it's just the grid is so antiquated. But you know, there's everything from, you know, the smart meter company, you know, to managing these, you know, huge distribution centers, the grid operators. There's the opportunities for innovation are huge.
But is there
And
a
it's
policy
happening,
that
yeah.
needs to change, or is that policy
Well,
already in place? I mean, is there something
No,
about
I know,
smart
there-
grid
there-
different than these
yeah.
other things that, smart grid doesn't get, you know, head to head with the oil industry? You know what I mean?
Right,
It's like-
right, but it it is, you know, the utility industry, which is, you know, as,
There's enough inertia.
yeah, thank you, yes, exactly.
So-
You know, which, the utility industry is about the same age as the oil industry, I think, roughly. And so, yeah, it's hard to change, and it's, you know, it's so regulated, so policy is really important.
They've made a lot of investments, there's not a lot of incentive
Yeah.
to embark on some new technologies. What do you think about, like, some people talk about smart buildings growing faster than maybe the smart grid.
Yeah,
So like the market is saying, the market is saying, we want this building to be smarter, we want this clusters of buildings to be smarter and work
Mhm.
together.
mhm.
How do you see, like, is that a separate avenue to increase our energy efficiency and increase,
Sure.
sort of bypassing the snail's pace of the utility industry?
Yeah, I would say so. That's, you know, these building control systems that can, you know, power areas of the building up and down, and with whether it's the air conditioning or the lights or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference. And you know, that everything connects to the grid at some point. So, you know, not everything if you're off the grid. But.
Do you think that would eventually push the smart grid, as far as utilities go, to innovate a little quicker?
Yeah, it could. I mean, it's just like, you know, utilities, we tend to lump them all together, but they're not all the same at all. And I mean, you see a lot of more moving faster and more innovation from the municipal utilities in Palo Alto, in Austin, and you know, more than the investor owned. And they, you know, they tend to be smaller, except for LA. But, yeah.
I would say that the smart grid is very much important to renewables because that's what's going to enable wind and solar to get to places that don't have wind and solar. You need the transmission lines, you need the ability to take advantage of when solar is available, the storage capacities and capabilities, and same with wind. And that's why we're talking about natural gas being able to fill in a gap there when solar and wind aren't available, because you can shut it down and turn it on faster, right?
But I think that the smart grid is sort of the smart grid independent of the renewables. Yeah, I mean, eventually when renewables become more than 0.1% of the power that's actually being used, I think that then the utility really has to have that smart grid, like you're saying.
But I think not having it is also hampering the development of those types of power, because you can't send it anywhere, so you can't make money because you can't deliver it.
A big part of smart grid is being able to integrate intermittent renewables and distributed renewables. You know, the grid's set up for one big old honking coal plant, you know, or nuclear, you know, just churning out the power, you know, you know, centralized and 24/7. And now we've got both intermittent sources, and they can be centralized, big solar plants, big wind farms, or, you know, or individual rooftops.
I guess my point is, like, do you think if Romney gets elected, there's going to be a shutdown of innovation in the smart grid? I kind of don't think so.
No.
No. I mean, but there will be a big shutdown in, like, renewables. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a different political animal, the smart grid, than all this other stuff. But maybe I'm wrong. That's just my impression, so, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
very different sort of deployment challenges and advantages.
Yeah.
The two do.
And issues that, you know, they need smart grid despite, even if it weren't renewables, you'd be
you're right.
Well, smart grid doesn't depend as much on investment tax credits and other forms of subsidies that are politically driven right now.
That's true. Yeah.
But it depends on the will of regulators and investor-owned utilities to make these kinds of investments. It depends on what part of smart grid you're talking about. If you're talking about, you know, there's grid side, distribution side,
Yeah, there's a lot of
transmission side, but then there is
Yeah.
certainly all the consumer side.
Yeah.
Last question?
Well, I just to follow up on the smart grid conversation. I think over the next couple of years, you can look for a lot of smart grid deployments overseas more than in the US. I don't know if it's policy related as much as just like need related in a lot of other
there is no grid.
developing
The grid
countries.
is-
Like
Yeah.
here, it works pretty well, so it's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and we're not gonna spend a ton of money. And then one thing I just learned today about smart grid, because we bank a couple of the big smart grid companies, Trilliant and Silver Spring, is the largest utility in the US is still smaller than, the largest, than the smallest utility in Europe or in the UK. So
They're
ours,
nationalized.
yeah, so they're just serving like really, really big populations. So now it's kind of like, well, so I think you'll probably see more deployments overseas.
Because it's one utility for the whole country.
No,
Exactly.
no, it doesn't.
Or even if it's not, like the biggest utilities here, apparently, like 3 million people, 3 to 4 million
No,
people.
they're bigger.
And they're just like 10, 15.
No, they're bigger than
million,
Yeah, I mean, Duke
Definitely
Energy is
bigger.
So,
Very interesting question though. So maybe there's some debate here, but it is tricky to figure out exactly which is more advantageous to, if you're a smart grid technology to promote it here or in Europe. Certainly Europe is a much more favorable. So for instance, if you want to buy or sell a home in Europe, if you want to rent a home, it must post its energy efficiency ratings. It's legally required to tell you, and multiple points. It's a standardized formula, and so, and it's considered every person's right beforehand. Like even if you're a renter, you have a right to know the energy efficiency of that home before you plunk down your money.
Yeah, well, it's like knowing the foundation or the insulation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
That right there, what a huge difference that would make is if every home buyer thought, ooh, I gotta get my energy efficiency rating in order to sell my house. And the realtors go around saying, oh, this is gonna really good energy efficiency rating. It's probably
Instead
more
of
important when it's
redoing your bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It costs you a lot.
We all
Just,
have
since we're talking about energy efficient buildings, probably some of you already know this, but the largest green building conference in the country is here in San Francisco this year, coming up in 2 weeks, called Green Build, U.S. Green Building Council. So check it
There's
out.
another green
This green
festival
And the
next
Green
weekend.
Festival,
Yeah.
That's on the
more
second.
consumer.
That's big, but
Oh, yeah.
Green Build is
Huge.
huge.
It's
Yeah.
more promotional,
Yeah.
I guess. the
Yeah.
festival.
And it's not always in the Bay Area.
No.
That's right, no,
Yeah.
it moves
Oh, that's
around
great.
to,
In
yeah,
Phoenix
different
or
cities.
something like that.
Yeah, sure.
So if you want to volunteer, that's a way to get into Green Build, because it is a hefty price tag.
Yeah.
It is.
Do you have connections
To
there
the volunteer?
for volunteering?
Yes, contact me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know some of the people on the board.
Okay.
So contact me. So let's wrap up with this question. So ultimately, we want to get more people on board with Cleantech. And sometimes I feel like we live in a little bit of a bubble here. And I'm from the Midwest, where when I was a reporter for the environment and Cleantech, people looked at me sort of cockeyed like I was from Mars.
Coal country.
Yes.
Yes.
So how do we motivate people in those sort of in middle America that tend to just sort of fluff off, just shove off this whole topic as being, pardon my French, but a little BS? Like, how do we, I mean, that seems like be sort of where we got to go next.
Yeah, well, my most recent trip was to Lubbock, Texas. And it just happened to be the site of a conference I go to every year called Society of Environmental Journalists, hosted by University, Texas Tech is there. And West Texas is a huge area for wind power. And, they don't think of it as some weird, ephemeral thing. I mean, this is money. The people or the wind developers are paying these cotton farmers or ranchers, for their land, and and it's making electricity, and they're used to. What was fascinating was the history of using the wind in West Texas with these, these old style windmills. It's sort of a symbol of the Texas plains, right? And they're used to pump water out of the aquifer because it doesn't rain a whole hell of a lot. And so they just wind as a resource, as an energy resource, goes back over 100 years. So this is kind of a different way to answer, but I think there are a lot of pockets of clean energy development and even leadership in places you wouldn't expect. It's not. You look at our top clean tech cities. Yeah, it's San Francisco, Portland, Seattle. But there, if you look beneath the surface, because we look at all the 50 largest cities, so it's all in there, and you can pick out, oh well, interesting. Why are there so many electric vehicle charging stations in Nashville? Well, outside of Nashville is a big Nissan plant. So, and so now they're making the Nissan Leaf in Smyrna, Tennessee. So, and people, in that area are have jobs doing, yeah, exactly. So I loved it when I read that you can charge your electric vehicle at a Cracker Barrel restaurant.
Speaking of the South, I was looking up something, Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard map, and there was a big hole where the South was. North Carolina has one, but it's it's blank all the way down to Florida.
Yeah.
So what can we do down there?
Well, they're just, I think the name of the game there in the South is kind of has the farthest to go. But some states, Mississippi, Arkansas, have been luring clean tech manufacturers. Even though, they don't have, stuff might not be deployed there, but it's as a job thing. And so I think, that's sort of, I keep, coming back to jobs, but I really do think that's, the way to raise awareness and give economic benefit, associate economic development with clean tech rather than Al Gore,
All right, that's all we have. That's all the time we have. So Clint's gonna be here, so you guys can ask your questions after that, and he can sign books if you haven't had your book signed already. Thank you very much.